If you were in Malta in 1968 or beyond and serving with 3 Para, a unit my dad was attached to as part of the Royal Army Ordnance Corps, you'd have probably been quite good at making eye contact. You would probably have been excellent, as most soldiers are, quite rightly so, at following the command to eyes left, and you would look left. Eyes right, and you would look right, or you at least move your eyes right. So that's necessary, isn't it? You're in the army, you have to make eye contact with the appropriate things at the appropriate time, the appropriate people when you're told to look at them. Obviously you must do that. That's a matter of possibly even saving your life. I mean, for example, supposing directly to the left there was a minefield. Yep. And you were ahead of a group of men leading them, and you were suddenly told, eyes left. So you quickly scan your eyes left, and instantly you see a sign, warning of a minefield or something. Well, let's assume that sign was put there to warn the enemy, but you spot it as well, right? Necessary in the army, isn't it? Strict eye contact. Let me tell you about another place where this eye contact thing has been causing a little bit of a problem. There is a school in Great Yarmouth. And in this Great Yarmouth School, they refuse to budge on their policy of strict eye contact with teachers. Apparently, walking down the corridor, see a teacher or whatever, in a lesson, contact, eyes only ahead, eyes only on the teacher, no staring out the window, no looking to the left or looking to the right, no looking like you're not interested. Victorian? Yeah, I mean, Victorian policy for a school that's going to become renowned for its discipline. Victorian policy because, after all, aren't the Tories taking us back to the age of the Victorians? I would imagine fairly soon that caning will become regular in schools, and if you misbehave, oh, you'll be birched. I imagine they'll be bringing back the approved schools next. Well, this particular school in Great Yarmouth, you can read about it in the Great Yarmouth Mercury, also has a pupil there who is a young lad with autism. Now, I talk about autism because, personally, I have 2 sons, and they both have disorders on the autistic spectrum. They are both now studying at university, and they just kind of grew up as fairly ordinary kids. They have Asperger's syndrome, which is a disorder on the autistic spectrum. Now, I know that the new head of this school has got to turn the school around and bring up academic standards so that they face the next Ofsted, they get a great report, they get loads of money because they've got a great report, and of course that's what it's all about, isn't it? I know he's got to get the kids ticking the right boxes, parroting out the right answers, probably little or nothing to do with actually any real education or teaching them anything, but it seems to be fairly much policy these days. You just teach people to robotically repeat facts or things you consider as facts. Problem is, the lad with his autism is now being judged as being badly behaved. Because strangely enough, when you have autism, the world appears rather different to you. Certainly if you have Asperger's syndrome, even reading people's facial expressions is confusing. You might look at somebody, big smile, like that sort of thing, big smile. They're really happy, yep, they're absolutely full of the joys of spring, they're really happy. And you might not get that. You might think, I don't know, they're angry, or the baring of their teeth shows some kind of aggression. Or you might look into those same eyes and not read that happy tone with the happy expression, but you might be almost a bit worried by what they're so excited about. Certainly some people with certain forms of autism, particularly Asperger's, can talk in a fairly flat, monotonous tone. They probably won't vary it very much at all. They'll keep it like that, and they won't really show much reaction from their eyes. In fact, their eyes could be darting all over the place. Right, so for this boy at this school, that is seen instantly as bad behaviour. Failing to look at the teacher, not looking around or looking elsewhere than the teacher, not looking where you should be looking, not walking in a straight line is another one. Got to walk in straight lines. Apparently they've got rid now of the sick bucket policy. Now, yeah, just let me tell you about the sick bucket policy, because it's a brilliant way for preparing kids for the Tory world of 0 hours contract, low paid work and slave labour. Because after all, even if your employees are feeling sick, you still want them in the office typing away there, or you still want them in the warehouse going round getting the stuff slavishly, so that after all, the billionaire that owns your company can earn a few more billion. So hence the sick bucket policy at school. It was said, until it was removed, that kids who felt sick would be provided with a bucket. I'm absolutely convinced that had this not been challenged, the head would have probably appointed sick bucket monitors, and you'd have got a badge and a congratulation in assembly, probably singing Christian worship songs, of course, and said, "I am a sick bucket monitor." Health and safety wise, little bit of an issue there about spreading infectious diseases and stuff like that. Little bit of an issue when the bucket gets kicked over and someone goes flying on its sickly contents. But then again, what is this school all about? Well, the reason I say this, obviously, is I very much support this lady and her kids. I have had our own children, who, as I say, are now at university, in schools, where, of course, allowances were made for their autistic disorder. But let me just make one other thing clear. All right, and I think people need to know this generally, and not just about education and the way things are going, but I think people need to know this too. Right? Yes, my kids are Aspergic. They were Aspergic. They still are Aspergic. Could they misbehave? Of course they could flaming misbehave. What kid doesn't misbehave? Yeah, what kid doesn't misbehave? I'm quite sure that this lad, although he is autistic, I'm quite sure he can misbehave. I mean, if he's a teenager, he probably answers his parents back, gets into all the stuff that you do as a teenager, and probably is just a typical teenager. I'm not going to get into this argument that people seem to be having. Oh, well, autism is therefore an excuse to excuse bad behaviour. Of course it's not. It just means that the people that are teaching this person have to be a little more aware of his behaviour, and, like his parents, whom they could approach for advice, try to understand when he is actually deliberately misbehaving. Do you know, when I was a kid, if you were deaf and you wore hearing aids, you'd have been sat at the front of the class, yeah? And they had hearing aids then that were like, you know, wires into the ear, little, well, bloody great transistor radio thing on your school blazer. Yeah, you probably had one in each ear. And you just looked like, well, it was just so obvious you were wearing a hearing aid. But I have known of kids in a school get the ruler across the hand when, even with the hearing aids in, they were still unable to properly hear the teacher. You know, and that's what happens when people don't understand and when people choose to discipline somebody for something that they hadn't even done wrong. You know, and it gets taken to extremes. Another one you find in many schools. Okay, everybody knows when, especially with maybe younger kids, one of the things they all want to do is to skive off and use the toilet and go and have a chat and whatever. I don't know, tell me kids that don't, yeah? Tell me kids that don't, yeah? Okay, but any teacher should be able to damn well manage that and not deny kids the human dignity and the human right to take care of their biological and physiological needs. But some schools, oh no, 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 no. You're not going now, you'll have to sit there. And if you wet yourself, you wet yourself. What? That, my friends, is what society is coming down to under the neo-Nazis that govern us. Neo-Nazi government, yeah, is saying, take it all back to the old days. Let's make Britain great again. Let's take it all back to the old days. Yeah, the old days of Dickensian England, Victorian England, the cane, the birch, the workhouse, unquestioning obedience to authority. Is that teaching anybody anything? This school, frankly, Great Yarmouth, and I'd like your opinions on this, needs to get its act together. And it needs to get its act together really quickly. My advice, obviously, contact the chairman of the Education Committee, contact your local MP, which is Brandon Lewis, and contact the councillor responsible for education in this area. And please, parents and others, make a big deal of this, because this needs to change.